They were asked to die for democracy, to fight for freedom on foreign shores. They were American heroes. But the country that sent them to fight a racist enemy abroad practiced its own brand of racism at home. This is the story of the men who fought two wars at once, a struggle that echoes in the fight for true equality today. Imagine for a moment you're an American soldier. You wear the uniform of the United States Army. You've pledged your life to defend your country from the tyranny of Nazi Germany. You're on a train rolling through the American South, and you stop for a meal. But you're not led to the dining room. You're sent to the kitchen to eat out of sight, because the main dining room is for whites only. As you wait, a group of other soldiers walks in. They're laughing, smoking, being served at the tables. They are German prisoners of war, Nazi soldiers, your sworn enemy. And in your own country, they are treated with more dignity than you are. Can you imagine fighting for a country that treats you like this? How would you feel in his shoes? This wasn't a bad dream. For Corporal Rupert Trimmingham and countless other black soldiers in World War II, this was a waking nightmare. In a letter that was later published, he asked a simple, soul-crushing question. Are we not American soldiers sworn to fight for and die, if need be, for this our country? Then why are they treated better than we are? That single infuriating moment gets to the heart of one of the most profound contradictions in American history. As the world waged war against fascism, over 1 million African Americans served in the U.S. military, ready to make the ultimate sacrifice for a nation that refused to see them as equals. They were fighting a war on two fronts, one against the Axis powers and another against the crushing racism inside their own military. Their battle was like trying to win a boxing match while fighting a disease inside your own body. This is the story of that dual battle, a story of incredible valor and unbreakable spirit. Before Pearl Harbor, the United States military was a mirror of the society it was sworn to protect, deeply and officially segregated. The official thinking came from an infamous 1925 Army War College study, which claimed that African Americans were careless, shiftless, irresponsible, and possessed inferior intelligence. This wasn't just a biased opinion. It was the official blueprint for prejudice, concluding that black men were unfit for combat and unsuited for leadership. Because of this, in 1941, the entire Army had only 5 black officers, and 3 of them were chaplains. For most black Americans, service meant being pushed into support roles. Cooks, mechanics, and laborers deliberately kept far from the front lines. So, you have to ask, why would they join? Why would any black man living under the shadow of Jim Crow volunteer to fight for a country that treated him like a second-class citizen? For many, it was pure patriotism. For others, it was an economic lifeline. The military offered a steady paycheck and an escape from the poverty of the Great Depression. But for many, there was a deeper, more strategic hope. It was called the WW2 campaign, launched by the Pittsburgh Courier, one of the nation's most influential black newspapers. It called for 2 victories, one against fascism abroad and a second victory against racism at home. The campaign spread like wildfire, a symbol of hope that their sacrifice in the war would be an undeniable claim to full citizenship. Imagine believing that your blood on the battlefield might finally buy you the right to vote in your hometown. Would you take that gamble? That hope was tested from the very first day of basic training. Putting on the uniform wasn't stepping into a new world. It was a military-themed version of the same segregated society they'd left behind. Black soldiers were sent to segregated camps, mostly in the Deep South, where they faced daily discrimination. They lived in separate, run-down barracks. They ate in separate mess halls. They were commanded almost exclusively by white officers, and the few black officers that existed could only command other black troops. You'd think an environment like that would break a person's spirit, but it didn't. Instead, for many, it forged an iron resolve. They weren't just fighting for their country anymore. They were fighting to prove an entire racist system wrong. In the fall of 1944, the war in Europe was hitting its brutal climax. It was in this crisis that one of the most decorated and yet overlooked units in American history was finally called to the front. They were the 761st Tank Battalion. Their motto was, "Come out fighting." For 2 long years, the men of the 761 Saint had been held back. Formed in 1942, they trained relentlessly, mastering their Sherman tanks. But the racist belief that they lacked the courage for armored warfare kept them sidelined. Finally, the sheer desperation of the war forced the Army's hand. On October 28, 1944, the 761st was reviewed by the legendary General George S. Patton, Jr. He gave them a speech that was part pep talk, part backhanded compliment. "Men, you're the first Negro tankers to ever fight in the American Army," he declared. "I don't care what color you are, as long as you go up there and kill those Kraut sons of bitches. Don't let them down, and damn you, don't let me down." It was a powerful moment, but what he said in private told a different story. Upon returning to his headquarters, he remarked, "They gave a good first impression, but I have no faith in the inherent fighting ability of the race." The men of the 761 Saint, nicknamed the Black Panthers, were about to prove him, and the world, wrong. They didn't wait long. On November 7th, the 761st was thrown into an attack on the German-held town of Morville-le-Vicq. The fighting was an inferno. One tank commander, Staff Sergeant Reuben Rivers, had his tank hit a mine. Shrapnel tore into his leg, deep to the bone. He refused morphine, refused to be evacuated, and just took command of another tank, continuing the charge. From that first battle, the 761st was in constant combat, becoming the tip of Patton's spear for a record-breaking 183 consecutive days. They fought across 6 countries. They fought in 4 major campaigns, including the infamous Battle of the Bulge, where their tanks provided crucial firepower to help break the German encirclement of Bastogne. The stories of individual heroism are staggering. Just days after his first injury, Sergeant Rivers was at it again. Near the town of Goebling, his crew ran into a German roadblock. Under direct enemy fire, Rivers defied orders to pull back, saying, "I see him. We'll fight him." He directed fire that wiped out the enemy position. A few days later, his wound still unhealed, he was leading another attack when his tank was hit. Rivers was killed instantly. For his extraordinary bravery, he would be recommended for the Medal of Honor, an award that would take 50 years to arrive. The 761st fought until the very end. In May 1945, they helped liberate the Gunskirchen concentration camp, a place born from the very same spark of racial hatred they fought every day. When the guns fell silent, the Black Panthers' record was undeniable. They had inflicted over 130,000 casualties, earning a Presidential Unit Citation, 11 Silver Stars, and nearly 300 Purple Hearts. The Black Panthers had been sent to war under a cloud of doubt, and they had answered with breathtaking heroism. They had defeated the first enemy, but the second one was waiting for them every single day. For every moment of glory on the battlefield, there was a moment of humiliation right behind it. The war against racism wasn't fought in specific battles. It was a daily siege against the spirit. The segregation was absolute. Black soldiers lived in separate quarters, often wooden shacks compared to the barracks of white soldiers. They were banned from white officers' clubs, theaters, and stores. This led to some of the most surreal and insulting moments of the war. Charles W. Dryden, who later became a Tuskegee Airman, recalled being at a base where German prisoners of war were allowed into the white side of a cafeteria, while he and his fellow black soldiers were not. Think about that. The enemy you are fighting has more rights on your own military base than you do. This wasn't an isolated incident. At some POW camps, there were 3 sets of facilities, one for white soldiers, one for German POWs, and a third, inferior set for black soldiers. It was a constant public declaration of their supposed inferiority. The discrimination went beyond social spaces. Black units were often issued inferior or worn-out equipment, and they were always the last to receive new supplies. This wasn't just an insult, it was a danger. Sending a soldier into combat with faulty gear turns a difficult job into a deadly one. And the threat of violence didn't always come from the enemy. Future icon Jackie Robinson, then a lieutenant, refused a driver's order to move to the back of a segregated military bus. He was arrested and court-martialed. Though he was eventually acquitted, the incident cost him the chance to deploy and fight. It was a stark reminder that an officer's uniform was supposed to be a shield, but Jim Crow's reach could eat right through it. The psychological toll of this war within a war was immense. How do you find the will to face a foreign enemy when you're treated like an enemy at home? The answer lay in their profound sense of purpose. They weren't just fighting for America as it was. They were fighting for America as it could be. Their excellence became a weapon. Every successful mission, every act of bravery, was a direct rebuttal to the racism they faced. They were told they weren't smart enough to fly. They were told they weren't brave enough to fight. They returned not to a grateful nation, but to the same segregated America they had left. The parades were often for white soldiers only. The heroes who liberated towns in Europe came home to find they still couldn't sit at a lunch counter or vote without a fight. The GI Bill was supposed to be a key that unlocked a new life with housing and education benefits. But for black veterans, that key was systematically denied by racist gatekeepers. This was the starting gun for the post-war economic race, but black veterans were held at the starting line while others were given a massive head start. This single injustice locked them out of the prosperity they fought to secure, creating a chasm in generational wealth that exists to this day. The homecoming wasn't just disappointing, it was dangerous. Some white Americans resented the sight of confident black men in uniform. Returning veterans became targets. Sergeant Isaac Woodard, just hours after being honorably discharged and still in uniform, was pulled off a bus, beaten by local police, and permanently blinded. His story became a national outrage. But the war had changed these men. They had seen the world. They had learned how to organize, how to lead, and how to fight. The war had forged them into something new. They were steel-tempered in the fires of combat. They couldn't be bent back into the shape of a second-class citizen. They had come home to continue the fight, and that's exactly what they did. Black veterans became the foot soldiers and leaders of the new civil rights movement. Medgar Evers, a World War II veteran, became a pivotal NAACP organizer. Oliver Brown, the plaintiff in Brown versus Board of Education, was a veteran. Their pressure led President Truman to desegregate the armed forces in 1948. But this was just one step. These veterans became the vanguard of a new phase of the fight, demanding the nation live up to its promises. In the end, the story of black soldiers in World War II is the story of a deep, painful paradox. They fought for a vision of America that existed only as a promise, not yet built. They faced two enemies, a foreign power that threatened the world, and a domestic ideology that denied them their freedom. They answered both with a courage that is hard to comprehend. In the face of enemy fire, they were heroes. But in the face of their own country's racism, they were pioneers. Their fight for the right to fight laid the groundwork for a social revolution. But that revolution is not over. The double victory they fought for was never fully realized, and their battle against systemic racism has been passed down through generations. Their struggle forced America to confront its hypocrisy then, and it forces us to confront it now. The government that asked them to die for freedom abroad still has a profound obligation to dismantle the systems of inequality at home. Their legacy is not just one of military triumph, but a moral challenge, reminding us that true patriotism demands we fight to make our country better than it already is. Their fight isn't just history, it's our unfinished business. Share this story so more people know the truth. And let's keep the pressure on for real equality. Check the links below for ways to learn more and get involved. And subscribe to join us in uncovering more untold stories. Next week, we'll uncover another hidden chapter. The story of Black nurses who saved lives but weren't allowed to treat white soldiers. Thanks for watching.